I want to share with you all of the details of this shot, and then I want to issue you with a challenge. I'll share with you the dates, the location, the aperture, the ISO, the shutter speed. I'll share with you the focusing mode, the metering mode. Heck, I'll even give you my inside leg measurement if you think that'll help. And I'll do all this information. I want you to go to the same place and get the same shot, knowing what all of those settings were and applying those settings. And I want you to post that image on my Facebook page, link down below. But let me tell you that the settings of this photo do not matter. And I'm going to spend the rest of this video telling you why. How much of this information do you think you actually need in order to go and get that photo? If your answer is virtually none, you're probably about right. Because really, the only pertinent thing about this is the location. The rest of it is completely meaningless to you. And this is one, why I no longer put the settings of my photographs up on my YouTube videos. And two, why anybody asking you what the settings of your photo and any particular photo were is of absolutely no help to them. And if you're the person asking, more importantly, it's meaningless to you. Why then do you think that some people, and possibly even yourself, go out of their way to say, wow, that's a great shot, what were the settings? As though somehow you can apply these magic settings and get the same kind of shot. It's just not possible. It's probably not until we take the settings of a photograph, the timings and everything else into the realms of ridiculousness, that we begin to see just how valuable, or indeed how not valuable, this information is to the viewer. In fact, the settings of a photograph are probably only really useful to the photographer, or indeed anybody looking at the photo that is trying to analyse perhaps what's not quite right about it, what went wrong, why is there movement in the image, or why is it too dark, why is it too light, why. Yeah. If there's a problem with the image, yes, I accept that knowing what the settings were is part of the fix, if you like. But in all other cases, I just don't see the point. This question is also asked in different ways by photographers all over the place. I saw this the other day on a live stream for someone. What's the best setting for where could be landscape photography, or could be astrophotography, or could be shooting a football match? It's at that point that you wonder the level of experience of the person asking. And this isn't in any way to do them down, but if you're asking these questions, then I think overall you do not understand exposure terribly well. Now don't worry, I have no intention of making this video anything about the exposure triangle, apart from the fact that you just need to appreciate that if you increase the shutter speed, you're reducing the amount of light coming in, therefore you need to push the amount of light coming in a different way, or increase the sensitivity of the sensor. So if you up the shutter speed, then you have to lower the aperture or increase the sensor sensitivity, the ISO in other words. If you do the opposite, then you have to do the opposite. It's Newton's third law of physics, if you like. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So basically, if we need to capture something that's fast moving in a low light condition, and in this case at a distance that is changing rapidly, we're somewhat stymied. So the ISO is somewhere around 1000. I'm operating somewhere at around 380 millimeters. It's around f9, and at that I'm getting, depending where I point the camera, anywhere from about an 80th of a second to about 350th of a second, depending whether I'm pointing straight into the light or somewhere away from the light. I managed to get somewhere in the region of 5 or 6 reasonable shots out of this in just shy of 600 photos. Now I consider that to be one hell of a hit rate, actually. Somewhere around 1%. That's not bad. for this kind of work. We've got a kite surfer, not necessarily in the same focal plane as the kite above him. He is moving in a very unpredictable way because the wind isn't a constant, and I'm having to use focus tracking on a camera that's got half reasonable focus tracking, but nailing kind of 1% I think is something to be quite pleased with. And at the end of the day, actually, I think it's a really nice photo. So I think we need to head off out and demonstrate more why the settings really aren't important to anybody other really than me. So I've come here to demonstrate just how little settings really matter. I've got the camera just set up. I've put it on a tripod so I can really emphasize just how little these settings matter. Put it on ISO 200. At F2.8, that's registering me 1/1000th of a second. And I'm going to take a series of shots at different exposures, or rather the same exposure using different settings, and put them on screen. And I'm not going to tell you which one is which. You'll see how little difference there are between all of them. So that's currently F2.8. Don't think I'm giving you the sequence that you're going to get these seen. There's an F7.1 there, there's an F14 there, and there's an F22. All at the camera's chosen shutter speed to go with that chosen aperture. Now, you may be able to tell the one that's shot at F22 from the others purely because I'm getting only 1/15th of a second shutter speed. So you may find that there's a little bit of movement in that because it's quite windy today. But beyond that, I challenge you to notice the difference because I'm focused in the same place on all 4 shots. Is it 4 shots? I don't know. To tell you the truth, amongst all of the excitement, I've forgotten. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you? So 4 images, all shot in the same place using the same exposure but different settings to get that exposure. Can you tell which is which? I think it's very hard. Full details at the end. You might say. That's a static object. Of course the settings don't matter. What about a long exposure? Well, let's show you how those settings don't matter a great deal either. Or rather, to put it back into context, yes, of course they matter. They matter to the photograph that's happening at the time. They don't make a great deal of difference to you because if you try to recreate the shot, your circumstances will be different. So let's head down to the beach and get some long exposures of the incoming tide. Let's see if you can tell the difference between these. Well, there's going to be a whole lot of squinting going on here. It's very bright over there, I apologise. So glasses on, glasses off all the time. I thought I'd come do a long exposure on the beach. Why not? It's a great place to demonstrate how the settings don't matter. Well, of course, they do matter. They matter to the photograph. What I'm saying is, specifically, they don't matter to you, having seen the photograph that I'm going to take here. And one of the reasons they don't matter, you can't repeat or guarantee to repeat the circumstances at the minute. This sea is placid as anything. It's just beautifully lapping up the shore here. Who's to say that's going to happen when you come out here? And depending on the shutter speed that I choose to get this shot will depend, or rather determine, what these waves look like when the image is finalized. So yes, it matters, but only to me for taking this shot and not to you looking at it, because you can't guarantee to repeat the circumstances. You've got to shoot for the conditions that you're faced with at the time, and that's why these settings to you don't matter. But I'm going to go ahead and take a long exposure of the sea coming in against this groin here. Absolutely sod's law that in the time it's taken me to set up the camera and do bits of B-roll and film and such, that the sun has disappeared behind a great big cloud over there. So the wonderful light that I was getting on this groin over here, well, it's not there anymore. And well, it's a big cloud, so I don't know whether this is going to be the photo I thought it was going to be, or whether it's just going to be something for demonstration. It's only going to be for demonstration, let's face it. I mean, I haven't really just even composed anything yet. Let's see what we've got. And also, in the time it's taken me to do this, the tide's come in a little more, so I'm not quite in the right kind of place for this now. I really ought to be coming back a touch. Let's move you too. This is one of the problems of working at this kind of time of day, when you're kind of against forces that you've got no control over whatsoever. Everything happens so quickly. All right, let's see if we can just get a very simple composition here. So I've simply moved back so that I can get the foreground of the edge of the water in with the background, well, in the full, you know what I mean. Or do you? Now, I started with a 10-stop filter on this because that's, well, there was a lot of light, the sun was there. Whether or not this is going to work now, I don't know. I have a very simple composition here. I mean, it's incredibly simple. Just, yeah, line of groin leading down to the water, and we're just going to smooth the water. And I haven't really gone back far enough. When I got here, this longer lens was good. It's not now. Anyway, it'll be all right. If I set this at f11, and I'm going to focus about a third into the image. So we start with first groin over there, which I don't think is in frame here. Hold on, let's twist you. So that groin there is creeping in on the right hand side of the frame. Left and right. Phew. Okay. But we're not talking about composition, are we? F11 at 25th of a second. Frankly, a 25th of a second, when I stick the 10-stop filter on here, is going to give me about a minute and a half, I imagine. Put this onto bulb mode, or live time as we call it, on Olympus, which is rather wonderful because it builds the image as it's shooting, so you're not blind to it. It's rather nice. Anyway, I'm just going to set that going, and I'm going to stop it at about a minute and a half, I guess. But because I've got the lifetime on screen, I can see the image build. Let me show you that. It's wonderful. And so you can see it gives me a histogram as well down there. And actually, I'm at 50 seconds, 51 seconds, 52 seconds. I think that histogram's looking good. I'm just going to stop that at a minute. There we go. I'll tell you what, I can't moan at that. A minute at, what was it? F11? That's not bad at all. So, yeah, quite happy at that. So, settings for this shot. Got a polarizer on the front, which I haven't adjusted, so it's just where I put it because it's attached to the filter holder. There's a 10-stop filter on there, and a minute at F11 at 40 mil. Oh, excuse me. And on the one thing I haven't even mentioned so far, on a Micro Four Thirds system, which, yeah, if you try to use those settings on a different camera system, an APS-C or full frame or medium format, well, pretty meaningless again, because the focal lengths are different, the sensor sizes are different, everything's different. So the settings don't matter, to you at least. I'm going to reshoot this. I've moved it up to F16, and that's going to mean I need a longer exposure time. So again, 2 shots, one at F16 at 130 seconds, and one at F11 at 60 seconds. Which one is which? Stick around to the end and I'll show you all of the images with their data. Right, well that was one heck of a faff. I've moved everything around because we're getting too close to the water, and then realised that my microphone connected to the Osmo Pocket probably wasn't working properly. So I've moved over back to my Zoom recorder, which should be working. Anyway, you don't need to know that. I've changed orientation, so I'm now looking down here. The sun is beginning to come back out again. It's lovely. And you can, I'm not sure how well this is picking up, but there's a couple of swimmers there, over there. And they're really being picked up by the golden light. We are moving to around F9 because most things need to be relatively in focus here. Maybe F10. I think it depends on what shutter speed I want here, to be honest with you. I've still got the 10 stop on here, so this is probably overkilling it. That reckons only 20 seconds at F9. We'll give that a go and see what happens. It's going to smooth out this water really nicely. Probably smooth it out too much. I'd probably prefer to see some definition in it, but you know, we'll see. But the colour down here is gorgeous. Let's see what happens in 20 seconds. Way too long, as I thought it might be. So we'll change the filter to a 6 stop, and even this might overkill it. But 20 seconds, half that 10, so 5 seconds or so. Back on here. 2.5 seconds. I got it wrong. Mental arithmetic's not so good these days. I'm just going to bump it up by a stop or so on the exposure because the last one was a little dark. So now 4 seconds at F9. And now we get some definition in it. But again, my point stands that if you tried this at F9 at 4 seconds, you'd have to have exactly the same conditions to get exactly the same kind of shot. It's all down to the conditions at the time. And there's a 20-second exposure at F18 just to smooth it out again a little bit more. So when you go and ask what are the best settings for any type of photography, just think about what it is you're trying to shoot, because no photographer is going to be able to give you a definitive answer for what the best settings are for anything, because everything changes. It's all down to the circumstances, the subject, the equipment, the lights, literally every possible combination of these things is going to change the settings that you need to use. So, example here, long exposure, a few seconds to many seconds to smooth out the water. That's, if we want to smooth out the water, we need to extend the amount of time that the shutter's open. If you want to get the greatest depth of field in an image, you need a small aperture. and therefore you're letting in a relatively small amount of light through a tiny, tiny hole. So you need a longer shutter speed, or you need to bump the ISO up. If you're not bothered about depth of field and you just need to collect data fast, so to speak, you've got a fast moving subject running through. If you need to freeze that, then you need a relatively fast shutter speed and work with the aperture that kind of fits the shutter speed that you need. So yeah, there are no best settings. You need to understand exposure, and you need to understand the kind of thing that you're doing in the environment that you're working in. Here's the other shots. Take care. Thanks for watching. If you've liked the video, please click the like button. If you'd like to see more, click the subscribe button. But if you're already subscribed, don't click it again. Won't work very well. And yeah, have a look at some of the other shots I'm going to get tonight, and indeed I will show you at the very end my favourite shot that I've had on this beach as a long exposure, looking in this direction over here. I suppose it maybe a month ago. I didn't shoot a video for it, but it really would be nice to hear what you think of this shot. And I'm not going to tell you what the settings were for it. Take care. We'll see you on the next one. And this is one of the other kite sailing shots I got. I rather like this one. And this is my favourite shot from this beach this year. I call it Empty Sea. So back to the shots of the church, and here are the settings for them. If you can tell the difference between these, you're doing incredibly well. If you want to see the more detailed ones again, there is a chapter marker on the timeline for it. Don't forget my inside leg measurement. It's crucial to getting these kind of shots.